Hey guys, I'm ExactlyOneSasquatch, and this is what's going to happen next. Today we're going to talk about what's going to happen next after Season 1, Episode 9 of The Bad Batch. Like and subscribe for more of this kind of content, because I just love talking Star Wars. Okay, so I just got finished watching this episode of The Bad Batch, and okay, there's a lot of stuff. I'm really excited. So much stuff for me to go over and talk about, and its possible implications. Bounty Lost. So immediately when I saw the title, Bounty Lost, I was like, really? I was immediately surprised. I'm like, Bounty Lost? Cad loses her somewhere? I was surprised that that would have been the case. I would have not expected Omega to be able to get away from Cad Bane. We open up with the Bad Batch leaving with Crosshair hot on their tail. Some interesting things to talk about here. Crosshair is still able, even as injured as he is, he's still able to pursue them, so he still has some ability there. So maybe that means that it's not going to be that he loses his ability to be an effective clone trooper, you know, an effective asset to the Empire. But, you know, who knows? Still on the table would be he would end up in bad standing with the Empire because he didn't succeed at his task, which was to kill the Bad Batch. So that might be more ammunition for Admiral Rampart to say, hey, look, these clone troopers, they don't get it done. So we see Hunter's injured for sure. I wonder how much longer that'll keep up, you know, how injured he'll be and for how long. Again, I would think that you get shot in the chest, you're not just injured. You're like, if that was any other clone, I think they're dead, but at least he's not just fine. Not that he did that much activity in this episode. I just noticed Crosshair has one of those bandages across his eye. So maybe he did get one of his eyes boiled, and maybe that will affect his ability to fight. I didn't notice that the first time, and obviously his eyes are very important. So I wonder if that's going to be a long-term thing. But he's flying a ship, you know, and shooting after them. So maybe he's permanently hurt, maybe not. It's not totally off the table. I like Hunter's inability to accept that Omega's, you know, gone. They need to get out of there. I think my favorite character is Omega. She's just so easy to root for, and like her bond with Hunter and her bond with the Wrecker and how just happy she is with this Bad Batch. It's very, very touching, and I just love it. So you could see here that Hunter can't like emotionally accept she's gone. And then we switch to Omega on the ship. You can see she's thinking and she's using her observation. You know, you could see how she like takes stuff in. The first thing she does after waking up in this place, she's immediately like looking around like, how does this work? And then she instantly sees the off switch. My first thought when I first saw that, my instant thought was force pick up a thing and hit that. I was immediately like, how is she gonna hit that switch? I didn't expect that it was just going to be Omega getting out of here, and I didn't expect for us to see Omega immediately get away, and one of her own accord. I didn't see that, and then the other one is I didn't see Sid not helping, and I didn't see immediately checking in with Cad Bane and Omega. I figured Bad Batch would have went away and regrouped before we ever came back to see Omega. And the fact that they get her back instantly, that opens the door up to just so many other possibilities. I thought this was going to be a 3 and 4 episode process of them trying to get her back. She doesn't even make it back to Kamino, which I thought was going to happen. And then they'd rescue her from Kamino. I like this. I like this more than what I was expecting. I think that this leaves room for more interesting storylines to happen. It seems like this overall arc was really to give the Bad Batch the knowledge that Omega is wanted by the Kaminoans, and maybe what they'll do next is to try to find out why. I'm fine with this idea that it was Cad Bane's fault for being a little lazy. Put his droid back together, he doesn't quite respect him a ton. I'm fine with that being the reason that Omega gets out, because that's not really the point. The real point is that Omega used her brain. Omega was creative and resourceful to get herself out of a problem, which is going to show Omega growing up and becoming more self-reliant and useful and capable. So I like this. And she was like a little manipulative, which is interesting, you know? She knew how to play someone socially. Because I feel like that's not an observational kind of like ability. It seems like she's just generally smart. You know, she's got lots of different skills that have to do with her brain, you know? Your personal interest with a young clone has threatened our operation enough. When I first saw this, I was like, okay, putting a little friction between Lama Su and Nala Se is interesting. I did not expect that. I thought the Kaminoans are going to be all on the same page, but now we see some individuality amongst them, some personalities, and it makes you think Nala Se has a personal connection or a personal interest in this young clone. Interesting. I wonder what that means. Wants to see what's best for her. Maybe sees her a little more as an individual, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure Nala say she was not very nice to Fives. Rest in peace, my boy Fives. Interesting that you see such kind of what seems like compassion for her, unless there's some other ulterior motive. Once you retrieve the genetic material from her Terminator. Okay, this reiterates Omega is valuable. There's something about her that's very valuable. Call it genetic material, whatever it is. I love how Tech is just the provide answers to the Bad Batch at the exact like convenient time that the story needs. Hey Tech, how the hell do you know all this stuff? I think I would wish for the Bad Batch to come across this knowledge in a more meaningful or interesting way instead of it just being Tech saying, I thought you knew that we all had inhibitor chips. I thought you knew this, that, and the other thing. You know, it's not my favorite plot advancement device. It's not terrible. Kind of a small thing, but could be. That's one area that I think could be better. Why are they after the kid? Begs the question. I'm glad that Wrecker isn't stupid. That was Wrecker who put forth that question. I like that he is a capable in the brain person, even though he seems like a dumb, lovable brute. I like that he's not just a dumb, lovable brute, because that's not that interesting, because we've seen that in so many different forms of media. So I'm glad that he has a brain, like I said last week. And then Tech is our plot advancing device, because he's so smart. Did we talk about this at some point before, that she was evaluating the genetic signatures of everyone? I don't quite remember. You can let me know in the comments below what episode that happened in, if it did. It could have. I just can't remember off the top of my head. She's pure first generation DNA. While our genetic structure was modified for growth and acceleration and obedience, which I'm pretty sure is all of the clone soldiers, Omega is pure genetic replication. How many clones like that exist? To my knowledge, there's only one other, a male clone named Alpha. Alpha? Later referred to as Boba. Alpha and Omega? I mean, there you go. There's a name connection. So Boba's initial name is Alpha? That's really interesting. I didn't even put that together. You got Alpha and you got Omega. Do you have Beta? Do you have Gamma? Do you have Delta? Like, they're saying that there's only two. Maybe there's more. This is the whole thing. I mean, that's not the whole thing. There is more to the story, but this was just mind-blowing. Boba's sister? Boba has a sister? Which isn't quite accurate, right? Because Boba is a direct clone of Jango Fett. So Boba genetically is identical to Jango Fett. I believe genetically you would be, I think they'd be the same as identical twins. But there's another one. So here's a whole bunch of ideas and thoughts behind this. Boba and Omega are both exact genetic replications of Jango Fett, except of course that Omega is female. But also, why does she have blonde hair? Because Boba still looked a lot like all the other clones and had like the dark hair. That's got to be a variation, right? We had theorized, does Omega have a little bit of Palpatine in her somehow? Because where did the blonde hair come from? Palpatine had the blonde hair, and her hairstyle kind of looks Palpatine-esque. So therefore, force sensitivity, you know, all that kind of stuff. And also, can we even directly trust this information? And it's not entirely true that she is just the raw genetic material from Jango Fett. And then here's another question. If there were two direct clones made from, like, exact clone copies made from Jango Fett, why did we only ever hear about the one from Attack of the Clones? Also, another interesting thing to talk about is that Omega then is the same age as, like, Rex, you know, I would think, because if he's also our first generation clone that has the advanced aging and all that stuff, they're the same age. You know, Boba is the same age. She's actually older than second generation clones and stuff. She's among the oldest clones. It's just that she doesn't have the advanced aging. Like Boba doesn't have the advanced aging. She's like a regular human. But this also is interesting to think about, because does that mean, is there anything special about Omega other than she's a female Jango Fett? So she's has good genetics. Jango Fett is an elite warrior, and that's it? Or is there more to this, you know? Is it that the Kaminoans just want Omega because she has the raw genetic material of Jango Fett, therefore they can use that again to either boost their existing clones, like boost as in like refresh them, because it said the genetic material of Jango Fett continues to degrade, or is it that they can get the raw genetic material so that they can then use it to try to build like force-sensitive clones and genetic variations of clones like the Bad Batch, so they have, you know, more techs and more hunters and more wreckers and that kind of thing? Or is it that there's something actually special about Omega that's more than just she's a direct clone of Jango Fett? And then there's actually one more possibility, which is any being, regardless of what your genetics are, can have the ability to be born force sensitive out of just like statistical variance. You don't have to necessarily be born of force sensitive parents to be a force sensitive child, because the force is intentionally vague. It's supposed to be not quite down to just genetics and measurable, quantitative, scientific data. Is it that Omega, even though she is a direct clone of Jango Fett, that she happened to then, as any other human can happen, to also be force sensitive, and it had nothing to do with the cloning process? Also an interesting thought to have. I like that Jennifer Corbett gets right to the point. You know, it seems like a lot of the projects with Dave Filoni's fingers on them get right down to the point, and they do the thing instead of doing this whole drawing things out. I'm still not expecting and not used to. Tech check with Sid, see if her contacts know anything. They do try to contact Sid, which is totally understandable and believable because Sid has the connections with the underworld. But then they say later, though Sid knows all about Cad Bane, she doesn't know any particular way to get like in contact with Cad Bane. And I like that the writers consider this. Like, it would make sense that Sid would have some knowledge and connection of underworld things, including bounty hunters. It doesn't seem that Sid has this adversarial relationship with a Bad Batch, which could have been a possibility. At least at this point, it's not any of that. It's just that she doesn't really have the resources to help them in this particular way, which is cool. I'm fine with that. It seems like this is a former Kaminoan hub. And it seems like it's more like a Camino in the sky instead of a Camino in the sea, you know, these types of pods and stuff, which is very interesting. You know, it's kind of expanding upon Kaminoan world building. And it will also be interesting if there are these other worlds, do the Kaminoans still exist in the Mandalorian time space? Because we've only seen humans with Kaminoan logos on them and whatnot. So it's interesting to see this abandoned facility. Why is it abandoned, you know? That's actually really interesting to think about. Why is this abandoned? Because we clearly see later in this episode the like tubes of green crap and what looks like either Kaminoan or Snoke looking things, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Like, is Snoke from the sequel trilogy some sort of messed up force sensitive Kaminoan? Is the end game here that Omega actually has this force-sensitive ability and in her blood because she's not actually just a direct clone of Jango Fett? She has something else going on. The Kaminoans try to retrieve her, extract her genetic material, and then fuse it and clone it into Kaminoans. How do Kaminoans breed? Do they breed by just cloning themselves? I never thought of that. Having Fennec kind of going toe-to-toe with Bane shows how capable Fennec is, which I like, because she's young. You gotta remember, she's a young, up-and-coming bounty hunter. Cad Bane's been in the game for a while, so Cad Bane has the experience behind him, sure, but we don't quite yet know just how good of a bounty hunter Fennec is. And as you know about Fennec Shand from The Mandalorian, Din Djarin knows who Fennec Shand is and says Fennec Shand is an elite mercenary. This is her coming of age, and I have no problem with her going toe-to-toe with Cad Bane. Fennec Shand came and killed Tan Wei just because she wants to be the one to deliver the assets so that she gets paid. I'm like, that's pretty cruel. But it turns out, as we know, that Fennec Shand actually got hired by Nala Se, not Lama Su, specifically with the instructions to be kinder to Omega. So the fact that Nala Se was greenlighting an order to have a fellow Kaminoan killed means that she cares about Omega or has a better alternative for Omega or something. And then here's another super interesting part. What does this mean? So many things going on here. Let me take a look at that again. Omega runs into the big green room, which we know this color and stuff of cloning and whatnot from Exegol. The thoughts here immediately are Snoke. Snoke and Palpatine and that kind of thing. But why is this place abandoned? I don't know what's going on here. I gotta think about it. These tubes that Omega is very intently looking at. Her touching it was very interesting. I didn't know if she has some force connection in there or if it was just she doesn't want to be stuck in a test tube her whole life. Because you can see her face reflected out back at her, and I think that's what it is she doesn't want to see herself in the tube. I haven't even mentioned yet, these look exactly like those tubes that you saw in Season 2, Episode 4 of The Mandalorian, where you looked like you saw some sort of Snoke-looking thing in some kind of a tube. They're trying to do some kind of genetic thing. It looks like the color is a little different. I'm pretty sure it was more of like a blue tint in Mandalorian, if I remember correctly, maybe I don't. And here it's this very green looking tint. Omega, I'm trying to help you. And it seems like that Fennec is notified of this by Nala Se. Fennec knows about this information, which is surprising because I feel like a bounty hunter is just, if you employ a bounty hunter, you would just say, here's the job, here's the asset, here's the details, go get it done, not why. You got the money? Boom, that's it. But Fennec is apprised of the situation, it seems, that Nala Se. The test tube falls on her, and then this is the scene that makes me think that Snoke is some sort of Kaminoan experiment, a attempted Kaminoan clone gone wrong. Actually, I'm gonna look up a picture of Snoke. What do his hands look like? Because I'm pretty sure Kaminoan hands, they have like 3 fingers, it looks like. All right, let me look at Snoke. Snoke has a whole actual hand. So maybe Snoke is some kind of partial clone with Palpatine, or like a Kaminoan cloned with a human, because he has like human looking hands. It doesn't particularly look like he has Kaminoan facial features or the really long neck. He just has the generic body shape, it looks like. I don't know, part human, part Kaminoan. Or, again, is this just a Kaminoan cloning facility for just them? Maybe this is how they reproduce. I don't know. I'm thinking it's more than that. And it looks like the Bad Batch caught her. And you could see, I mean, you see in this scene how Omega is a kid and she is just terrified. Look at her. Oh, I feel so bad. She's terrified, you know. Bounty hunter's after her. She's running for her life. And he only tells a partial truth. He says, you're valuable to them more so than all other clones, even us. He doesn't explain why, which is, you know, she still has the raw material of Jango Fett, but she's an unaltered clone of him. Different how, which is just the question. That's funny, different how. That's what we're all wondering. It seems she's just an unaltered clone of Jango Fett, but I think there's more. There's more to this story. I don't know what it is yet. Could maybe be nothing. And it'll be interesting to see if Omega ever runs into Boba Fett, otherwise known as Alpha. What if they're like, hey bro, hey sis, hey Boba, want to teach me how to be a bounty hunter? Or is it that Boba goes, my sister is a Jedi, you know, or uses the Force? Here's an interesting prospect. Since Nala Se doesn't want Omega hurt, and it really seems like fundamentally Nala Se is paying Fennec Shand to keep Omega out of the hands of Lama Su and basically keep Omega safe. The Bad Batch are trying to keep Omega safe. Fennec Shand is trying to keep Omega safe. At some point in the future, do Fennec Shand and the Bad Batch work together? That's interesting. I didn't think of that until now. But I feel like Nala Se might maybe even contact the Bad Batch, or gives them a heads up whenever Lama Su and other bounty hunters are closing in on them. She is trying to thwart their plans. That would be smart. Nala Se could just be a contact for the Bad Batch. Bad Batch, Fennec Shand, and just goals to keep Omega safe. And it depends on how big of a rift there is between Nala Se and Lama Su. Does Nala Se, I don't know what her motives are now, you know? Is she interested in extending Kaminoan business? Is she interested in getting paid by the Empire? Or does she only care about Omega's well-being? Is Nala Se going to try to overthrow Lama Su? Kaminoan Civil War? And this is an interesting conversation as well between Omega and Hunter. I don't want to end up an experiment in a test tube. Understandable. And then obviously Hunter tries to make her feel better. That's not going to happen. And he probably believes that too, that he won't let anything happen to her. But she did get taken. Hunter already immediately failed in protecting her, which I thought of because literally you had Cad Bane versus Hunter and Cad Bane won and took Omega. Hunter was not able to protect her. And she, here Omega accurately says you can't fight them all. And it's true. What does this imply? Does this imply probably that Omega is going to have to learn some more skills and get better to be able to fight them off herself? Or maybe this is going to be a nod to the goal of the Bad Batch is going to be to end this problem at the core source. Do something to kill Lama Su, or maybe they try to go capture Boba Fett, because they know about Boba Fett, and give him to the Kaminoans so that they don't even need to look for Omega anymore, Or like, that might become their motivation instead of just running, figuring out a way to make it so that no one wants Omega in the first place. Another interesting theory that could happen is they provide them with Boba and they go, he's not good enough. You know, he's not exactly what we want. And then Bad Batch go, what? Why? They're both just genetic copies of Jango Fett. And then they're like, it's not exactly true. There's actually something special about Omega. This is just some random theory. I think that's kind of out there. It probably wouldn't happen, but hey, there's an idea. Okay, let's think about this. What's gonna happen next? This is tough. I think long-term, generally what'll happen next is Lama Su at some point is going to find out that Nala Se is helping Omega, and he won't like that one bit. I think maybe at some point, Fennec ends up helping the Bad Batch. At some point, Boba Fett's going to mix into all of this because they know he exists. I wonder if they're going to try to track him down somehow. Crosshair seems to be missing an eye. These are all possibilities, but I can't figure out what exactly is going to happen next. There's also Rex in the mix and Ahsoka at some point. Or maybe Crosshair runs into the Bad Batch again at some point, but at the same time the other bounty hunters do. And maybe Crosshair has either some kind of change of heart and takes out one of the bounty hunters. Here's one more possibility. Maybe if the Bad Batch end up going back to Sid and doing more odd jobs for her and that kind of thing because they have to pay off a debt, maybe Cad Bane tracks down the Bad Batch by working through the criminal underworld knowledge, like a network, finds out that they work for Sid, and then he either comes and threatens Sid, he offers Sid a reward of money which would pay off the amount of money that the Bad Batch owes them in the first place, and then Sid betrays the Bad Batch, because what are Sid's morals? Sid's not that interested and fundamentally, like, loyal to the Bad Batch. She just is like, as long as she gets paid. They literally said that in one of the episodes. So I think Sid sells out the Bad Batch's position at some point as well, and I guess sells them out to Cad Bane. Boy, there are a lot of moving parts here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if I missed anything in the episode. And anyway, I'll see you again for the next episode. Boy, I love this show, and I love Star Wars.